Hello everyone and welcome to this talk about hash-based signature schemes and in particular XMSS, WOTS and Merkle trees. It's August 1st and my name is Ryan McCartney. Let's quickly go over the agenda. First I'm going to talk about hash-based signature schemes, then we cover some basics, and finally we get into XMSS and WOTS and prove both of these signature schemes to be secure. Finally, I will give you an outlook on which signature schemes you might have a look at afterwards. First of all, what will you learn when you, at the end of this talk, what will you learn? You will learn how quantum computers are about to shake up the world of digital signature and how XMSS and WOTS keep our online communication secure. And you will know which simple building blocks are making up XMSS. First of all, we might ask ourselves this very simple question. In the world of post-quantum, where we maybe have access to quantum computers in the next couple of years or 10, 20 years, can we create a post-quantum signature scheme using just hash functions? And this question you can keep in mind throughout the whole talk. We will come back to it at the end. So let's answer this question. First of all, we have to look at today's challenges, which is that Shor's algorithm, published in 1994, threatens public key primitives such as DSA, RSA, and elliptic curve cryptography, which is elliptic curve digital signature algorithm and elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. All of these are able to be broken with a large-scale quantum computer in polynomial time. So this is an exponential speed up from the classical security these signature schemes or classic public key primitives gave us when using a quantum computer. But we also have some other challenge today, which is that quadratic speed up on hash functions or general search problems, which means that you can search any given item in square root of n time for a n large array. But we can mitigate this problem because it's not an exponential speed up, that we just double the p-length or hash size. So even though we are looking at hash-based signature schemes today, and they are also affected by Grover's algorithm, these aren't affected as much as DSA, RSA, or elliptic curve cryptography. That's why we are looking at it today. Just to give you a quick quick overview of what will be affected if we don't act now, is that our currently in use chain of trust in browsers is using X509 certificates, which start at the root certificate level, which every computer gets on this ISO image. If you install it, Microsoft, for example, installs it. It's pre-installed, and then the chain of trust goes down to the specific website vendor. And these certificates that build this chain of trust are based on this classical public key primitives, in particular mostly RSA and elliptic curve cryptography. And also another reason why we need to act now is forward secrecy. So everything we do now should be secret or should be authentic, and so the signatures should be authentic in particular, even in 20 or 30 years. Yeah, so looking back at it, it's not enough to be secure in the moment. It has to be secure in 20 years as well. It's what forward secrecy is doing. Next thing is I want to give you an overview of quantum resistant cryptography, which is the approach that NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, published, on which categories we could look at to solve this quantum problem. The first one is lattice-based cryptography. I won't go into detail much on these other categories other than hash-based signatures. But interesting thing about lattice-based cryptography is that it's very hard to get a proof that actually holds up. So if you have a proof about 100 bit of security, so you need an effort of 2 to the power of 100 to break this scheme. In 2012, and just 1 year later, this dropped by about 20 or 25 bits. So you can't really be sure which security level you're actually getting. Another approach would be the code-based cryptography, which is published in 1978. It's called the McAleese cryptosystem, and many successors have been made, but also many of them have been broken. The large problem with this cryptosystem is that the signature key sizes are very large and a couple of megabytes. And this means that when you go on any website that you haven't visited before or browse a large website, you have to download multiple certificates, and this chain of trust has to be established. And you can imagine how long this will take, and if every website loads about 50 megabytes of data just to get the website authenticated, and then the website still has to load. So this would make the browsing experience or general communication, internet communication, very long, very slow. And then you also have multivariate polynomial cryptography. As I've said, I won't go into much detail, but many also have been broken. And finally, we're going to look at what we are going to look at today, which is hash-based signatures. And their security is well understood, but they have a drawback, which is that they only can they are limited to the number of signatures they can actually sign. So the digital signatures are upper bounded, and that's why we thrive to get 2 to the power of 60 many signatures to be signed in order to have a virtually unlimited amount of signatures to sign. Hash-based signatures are principally divided into two kinds, which is first the stateful and secondly the stateless signature schemes. The stateful signature schemes have to keep track of a state, of an internal state, which means that if you forget to update this state, you compromise on security. Especially in particular, we use one-time signatures, and as the name already tells, you only should use them one time to sign one thing. And if you don't update the state and thus use this one-time signature twice, you can, or an attacker can immediately forge a third message out of the two components of the first two messages, and this third message is immediately a forgery. So it's a valid signature. Something you haven't said is now believed to be by you, assigned by you. That's also the signature scheme I'm going to present today. So even though this has a drawback, you have to just be very careful to atomically update this internal state and make sure that it doesn't that you don't use the one-time signature twice. And this stateful hash-based signature schemes already have many applications because they are quite fast and low CPU power, or quite efficient actually, because they can be implemented using special instructions in some CPUs. And this is mostly the use case is mostly low power PCs, long range wide area network, over the air updates when you have maybe a firmware vendor, smart locks, and on chip verification. The stateless schemes build upon these stateful schemes. The one I will present in the Outlook today will take in this XMSS, and make it possible to use this one-time signatures actually a few times. So we widen that definition to a few time signature as long as the attacker can't influence which particular one-time signature we will use twice or thrice. Thus they mitigate on the lost update. I will mostly present three schemes today, which is first the Merkle signature scheme and the XMSS, so extended Merkle signature scheme, which uses another primitive. So the Merkle signature scheme uses the Lamport Diffie one-time signature, and extended Merkle signature scheme uses Winternit's one-time signature scheme, which is an improved version of the Lamport Diffie one-time signature scheme. And then also we have stateless variants, which is the one I will give in the Outlook, which is Sphinx Plus. Now for the historical development of hash-based signatures. First, Lamport, Merkle, and Winternitz all worked on the same problem, independent of each other, where in 1979 Lamport introduced this one-way, one-time signatures, and Merkle published a well-known Merkle tree, which is also in use in Bitcoin to combine all the transactions that are inside one block to one single value. And then Winternitz also improved on the Lamport one-time signature scheme also in 1979. Then a lot of time happened until any meaningful improvement were made. The Winternitz one-time signature plus is using bitmasks and improves the security a little bit. And then XMSS is also published. XMSS has many variants, such as XMSS multi-tree, XMSS T, and XMSS Plus. And also XMSS is being standardized and is RFC 8391 since 2018. And in 2015, Sphinx introduces hash-based signatures. And then in 2020, Sphinx Plus gets also standardized by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. To get you on track, we are now in the part of the foundation. We have some assumptions that you already know, but this is about the level that you already need to know, which is collision resistance on hash functions, pre-image resistance, and second pre-image resistance. Each of them, as you can see, have kind of different paths to achieve, but in hash functions, they work in a principle where you get an input and have an output, and normally you can't go from the output back to the input. So I give you information about the output and ask you to give me the input. This should be a very hard problem to solve. The collision resistance is just given nothing, and then you have to find two x and x prime which match in their hashes. The pre-image task would be to give you one hash, and you have to find any x prime which can be the same as x, such that the hash of x prime matches the one I have given you before. And the second pre-image is quite similar than the collision, because you're given now x and the hash of x and have to find a different x prime which matches in their hashes. Then for the Merkle trees, this is what Merkle said in 1979. The problem is to authenticate A's yi, which is just a collection of y of any values, n-bit values. And the simplest but unsatisfactory method is to keep a copy of A's yi. In this section, we describe a method called tree authentication, which can be used to authenticate any yi of any user quickly and easily, but which requires minimal storage. So formally defined, this would mean that a vector of data items y from y1 to yn is has to be authenticated. So we have to be sure that this comes from Alice or A, and without A having to give us the whole vector. So we need some kind of representative that A can give us in before through secure communication, and then we can expand this information into any amount, so y1 to yn, and also be sure that this data is authentically coming from A and not from some impersonator that wants us to believe such X is also authentically coming from A. Yeah. The formal definition of Merkle trees is defined on the right here, but in principle you can imagine it to just hash some input values. We have in this case 2 values that we want to believe that they are authentically coming from A, which means this y1, you can see my pointer, this y1 here at the left bottom is hashed once to get this lower left node, and exactly the same for y2 to get this lower right node. And in order to achieve at the root node, which A will give us, and as a representative of both y1 and y2, you have to take these 2 values at the leaves at the bottom and concatenate them together, and then finally hash them. Yeah, that's what's written here. So you have to, in this lower left node, this lower right node, you concatenate it together, indicated by these bars, and then you apply a function or hash function again. So f is a hash compressing hash function, and h is this function that constructs the Merkle tree recursively. And this is the whole principle behind the Merkle tree, because now we can expand on this information which is authentic already, and anyone can give us this y1 and the necessary information to recompute this root node at the top. And if we can successfully recompute the root node with this information, we can be sure that y1 was also authentically in this set of things that A wanted to authenticate. Yeah, and no other X that is coming from the outside. Imagine a node here, the third node, and some impersonator A that wants some adversary A, which wants this third value to be also under this root node. Then he has to pick some other value that he can combine it with, so it matches in this root node. But this is the whole purpose of using a hash function, because this means that you break the second pre-image resistance. So when you have this root node, which is from A, and you can compute backwards in any direction or find a collision that matches up with this root node, this would exactly mean breaking this second pre-image resistance property. And now, to give you an idea of how these Merkle trees are used in practice, is still the same setup, but now I've expanded it by also including this y1 and y2. And we have this diagram where at the top, this solid surrounding of this blob node means that we already believe this to be authentic, because we've been given this node through a secure channel by Alice, and these dotted nodes, especially also at the bottom, are nodes that we either don't know or we don't believe to be authentic right now. And in the start, we actually don't know any other nodes than the root node. And in order to maybe it's now authenticate this y1, we publish this y1 together with an with additional information, so you can reconstruct this tree in a way that you arrive at this root node, and this should match in order for you to believe that this y1 is also coming from A authentically. Note that all this information can be made public here. There's no secret part of it. It's just authentication, no secrecy. And if we publish now this lower left node and this lower right node, everyone can compute up to this root node, and also be sure that these two nodes are part of the tree. And then we can also publish this y1, and everyone can compute upwards from this y1 to this one, this node, and everyone can take this node together with this node and arrive at the top and check that this matches. And there's an interesting part about this, because we can be efficient here, and we actually didn't need to transfer any y2 or anything that might come afterwards, this y3, y4. We just need to publish values that are on this computation path up to the root. We, remember, just want to go from y1 to this root, which means we cross about log n many nodes, and we also need to publish y1. But also another thing that is interesting here is that because this is on the computation path, this node can be fully computed by the verifier and doesn't need to be published. And thus we only need the every other node here on this, every sibling node on this computation path, so we can build the next higher node. So in this case, all that we need to publish is y1 and this right sibling node, and everyone can compute upwards and check that this is equal. So this means, as a resolution of this, we need to publish y1 plus log 2 of n many values, where n is the number of nodes in the tree. Number of y1 to yn. For the signer, or no, for the generator of the tree, we don't need all y1 to yn in memory, and also we don't need to have this whole tree in memory. We can be quite efficient, because you can imagine making a left first search about this tree. When you want to first compute this root node, the task is, compute this root node. What information do we need for that? We need this node and this node, so let's do a depth first search, go first in this node. Okay, what information do we need to construct this node? Okay, this one, we can have this one directly from the from this vector of y's, y1, and then we have this value. In order to compute this value, we need also this value, so step down here, get this value. But interesting, as long as we are here already, we can forget about y1, because we only need the same level of information right now. And we compute this node, we take this node and go up here. This means that actually we only need log n many values to be in memory at all times. And also we can make use of the fact that we first compute the lower left path and then the lower right path. So if we can dynamically compute this y2 from this y1 with some additional information, imagine a pseudo-random number generator that outputs for input 1 this y1 and for input 2 this y2. We also don't need this y1 ever again until we use it to sign, and then we can just plug in some internal counter 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 and get output of this pseudo-random number generator, which is neat because we also need only log n plus 1 many values at memory at all time. That's nice. Because remember at the start I told you that we need about 2 to the power of 60 many values. Imagine having a tree of 2 to the power of 60 in your memory. That's impossible. But a tree of 60 values is very much possible. So this is nice. And directly from this we can construct this Merkle signature scheme using the Lamport-Diffie one-time signature scheme. One-time signature scheme. Yes, if we just use y1 to yn as the private values of this Lamport-Diffie one-time signature scheme. If you don't know what this Lamport-Diffie one-time signature scheme or LOTS is, you can just imagine having, for every bit that you want to transfer, you having two values, x and x prime, and you hash both of these values independently and publish this hash values as the public values, um, as the lower parts of the Merkle tree. So in principle, we can use this diagram. So you have x and x prime at the bottom. You hash those values and publish those values. And we construct this Merkle tree on top. So we actually don't publish those values, but only the top value. And then when you want to sign a 0, you publish the this left value. And if you want to sign a 1, you publish this right value. And this is the whole principle behind Lamport-Diffie one-time signature schemes. Depending on which bit, or if the bit is 0 or 1, you publish different secret keys, which means now you can reconstruct this tree with the secret key and confirm that this is authentically coming from you, and this 0 bit is thus also authentically coming from you. So this is already a nice property, but the Merkle signature scheme has one drawback, which is still that you need quite much information to be published, and the assumption for the signature scheme is that you need a collision resistant hash function, which is not good, but you can imagine the collision resistance is important, because otherwise I would find a collision that matches your first and second pre-image, and then I can combine some collisions and impersonate you with your publicly known value and forge new signatures from this. So this is why this Merkle signature scheme needs the collision resistance. We now go into the XMSS, so extended Merkle signature scheme, which has a different kind of assumption. We now only need a pseudo-random function, so a pseudo-random number generator, and we also only need a second pre-image resistant hash function, which is strictly easier to achieve property than the full collision resistance. And this Winternitz one-time signature scheme is just like using a Merkle tree, but now no, the XMSS is using this Winternitz one-time signature scheme, and at the top, the XMSS is just like the Merkle signature scheme, but instead of using the Lamport-Diffie one-time signature scheme, we now use this Winternitz one-time signature scheme, which is an improvement of this LOTS. And the basic principle behind the Winternitz one-time signature scheme is to extend this idea of having one hash computation and publishing the secret value depending on which bit you want to sign. We now expand this from base 2, which is bits, to base W or omega. I will call it W today. So you can not represent 0, 1, but you can represent 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to W minus 1. Yeah, these are the values that you can represent, which is W many values for each digit in this signature scheme. How do we do this? You can imagine just continuing this chain of hash functions we did for the Lamport one-time signature scheme, where you had x and hash of x, and you publish hash of x. But in the Winternitz one-time signature scheme, we now publish not x, but we publish hash of hash of hash of hash of hash of hash of hash, and so on, of x, which is w many times. So now this public key can, you can publish any value under this public key, and everyone can reconstruct the public key from it, which means you can encode w many values in one digit. this is an improvement of this. And there is a problem where you can actually, if you publish any value in this function chain, maybe you publish the 3 times applied the hash function, and your public key is at 16 times applied of the applications of the hash function. Everyone can compute the from 3 times up to 6 times or 10 times and publish this value, and you can do nothing about it, but this will be a valid signature. So this is immediately a forgery. This is why we also need a second value. So we have two secrets, x and x prime, and these are two functional hash chains, which one is the positive of the value and one is the information of how often you still have to apply the hash function. Yeah, and then you can imagine if one computes upwards from 3 to 6, this also reduces the number of times you have to apply the hash function. So if you increase this x, you have to decrease the value of x prime, which means that you have to find a second pre-image for the second part of your signature. Or otherwise, if you say you now need to apply the hash function a couple of times more, so you forge on this checksum side, you have to find a second pre-image for the first one, for the x, or hash of hash of hash of x, and compute downwards to only twice apply the hash function. And also we can extend this idea of having only W many values to represent into having a multi-digit scenario. This is equivalent to having the multi-bit scenario in the Lamport Diffie one-time signature scheme. So instead of only signing 0, 1, you can assign any n-bit integer, n-bit value, or bit string. And in this case, we have this multi-digit scenario, which can where we have any L many digits ranging from base W digits, yeah. And yeah, we can actually extend this idea of this checksum, where we have this checksum not for every digit, where we have x and x prime, but we have only one checksum for every digit, for all digits of the message. So we still compute the checksum as the remaining number of times the hash function has to be applied to this signature of the message part, but we just sum it up for every digit. So if you have two digits, where one digit it needs to be applied 10 times and one 3 times, you now have the checksum of 13. This also means, just as before, that this whole signature is never 0, because either way, when the message is 0, the checksum will be at this maximum value, because you still have the maximum number of times the hash function being applied. And other way around, if your message is not 0, but your checksum is 0, this means that you don't have to apply this hash function any more time, which means that the message part is at its maximum, and thus the whole thing is not 0. Formally defined, we have this WOTS dollar, which is a kind of variation. Just like XMSS has many variations, WOTS also has variations. And the original one presented by Merkle in this paper on Merkle trees is called WOTS, and the one I'm going to present now is WOTS dollar, because it's a multi-digit scenario, and defined by Buchmann et al. In 2011. And there also exists WATS Plus, which is the version that is currently in use in the RFC I've mentioned at the beginning. In order to define the Winternitz one-time signature, we have this parameter W or omega, which is greater than 1, strictly greater than 1. And this is commonly 16, which means you can actually store it great on computers as just doing a hex encoding of your original message. And it's exactly what we do. We have this m-bit message that it's encoded into hex, which means we now have L1 many bit digits, which can be calculated by this L1 formula. And we have this checksum, which is, remember, the remaining number of times you have to apply this hash function, which can be computed by L2, many base W digits. So both of these are in base W, and these will be combined into the single signature we publish. Then also we need this pseudo-random function, as I've mentioned earlier, which is a set actually of pseudo-random functions. So this is where the WOTS dollar differs from the original one. We have this family of functions which are indexed by their key, and instead of applying this hash function multiple times, we apply this pseudo-random function on some publicly known x multiple times, and every time we walk to the next key. So we, instead of doing a random walk in the in the domain of the hash function, we now do a random walk in the function family fn. So just to get you on track again, if we apply this function one time with the key k on the publicly known value x, we select the kth pseudo-random function from this function family and get some output, which is just applying this pseudo-random function with this input, so we get a random pseudo-random output. And if we now request f2, so twice applied with the original key k on this publicly known value x, we first evaluate it recursively here as this result, and this will be our new key. So now we select the AF1 pseudo-random function and apply x on it. So in every step we still apply x on it. So x is incorporated n many times if n is this power of this f function, and we do a random walk through this function family. Then, in order to properly define a signature scheme, we now need to define the keygen sign and verification algorithm. X and ek are public values, that's why they are green here. And we uniformly at random select this n-bit value x, and every sk1 to skl is also uniformly randomly picked as an n-bit value. Then we compute the public key by applying this f function w minus 1 many times on this x, and the secret key 1 and l respectively here up to l. And this is just going up this function chain to arrive at the public key. Then we split our message into base W and calculate the checksum and split it into base W many digits, which is T. Now we speak of L many, which is a combination of L1 and L2, many values. And then we have the signature by just using the secret key and going up this function chain, not as much as we did here, which is W minus 1, but the T1 many times, which is just the base W representation of the first digit of the m-bit message, yeah. So we apply this function chain T1 many times, and then any verifier can calculate how often he still has to apply this hash function on this value we published here. So together you can apply this lower right equality, which is just any f lambda 1 plus lambda 2 plus 1 can be split up into these two recursive calls. So in this case, if you combine all of these and plug in this T1, so in principle you have this one at the top, and this one is just the signature 1 here. You can combine this to be added together, and then this will compute up to this public key if everything is valid. If it's a valid signature, this is why you can ask if this vector equals this public key. Yeah. And this is the whole principle behind the Winternitz one-time signature scheme. Now I've got the visualization so you can imagine it a little bit better. Still we have X and the secret key I in this case. So for every secret key this is done. Then you have this random, this pseudo-random function family, and select the kth function from it and apply X, apply it with the value X, and you get a new key out of this. And this you do again with X and get a new K prime out of this. And then you can publish this K prime as a signature, and anyone that knows, okay, we have this value 2 encoded in this K prime or sigma 1, sigma I, knows how often he still has to compute upwards to this public key. So in this case, we have to apply this function twice. And the value X is publicly known, this sigma I is known, this 2 is known, and this pki is known. And then you can exactly match that this is the public key indeed. Now, in order to prove this, we want to rigorously prove this. We have to first propose a claim, and then we will prove it by doing a 2-time reduction. So we go from one to one other, and from these other to the pseudo-random function property. First, let's define this function family again. So this function family consists of functions f indexed by this key k, which go from an n-bit value to an n-bit value and get a key of n bits. And also we have this kappa value, which is quite important because for these functions we can define this kappa value as the maximum number of values that applying the f function. In this f function we have this many keys that arrive at the same value. So for any k and x, where k is the key of this function f and x is the input, we want to have at most kappa many other, or kappa minus 1 many other keys, which are all distinct from each other, which also match to the same output. So in this case, this is quite similar to a collision in the hash function situation and the number of collisions that we have at most. In this case, we say this is the property of the of kappa many key collisions. We now say that fn is time in polynomial pseudo-random function, and epsilon the advantage of pseudo-random function. When we have this pseudo-random function fn or function family fn, Winternitz one-time signature scheme is this polynomial time and this epsilon existentially unforgeable under chosen message attack. And this second part you have to look up if you don't know it, because it's a standard definition. And this claim already tells us that we have polynomial much time to break this Winternitz one-time signature scheme, and the success probability of any adversary, of the best adversary, is lower than epsilon, which is bounded by this pseudo-random function input adversary advantage on the pseudo-random function by some positive factor, which makes it more likely to succeed actually. And if you are interested about this double fraction here, you can imagine this value to be 0, almost 0, because 2 to the power of n for n 256 is almost 0. So this is almost just 1 divided by kappa, the number of maximum key collisions, and this double fraction then just resolved to kappa. and kappa is a positive value. So this whole thing is polynomial in positive and polynomial or negligible in the security parameter n. Also, this definition tells us one more thing. For this existential unforgeability for a chosen message attack, we have three parameters: the time, the advantage of the maximum adversary, and we have the number of oracle queries. So this is how many. This is technically about this chosen message attack part of it. How often we can ask our instance of WOTS to sign any arbitrary message we can choose. So it's this chosen message. In this case, this value is 1 because we say Winternet's one-time signature scheme is a one-time signature scheme. Thus, you can only get one time the signature out of us. This is also the key critical point where you have to make sure that you actually use this one-time signature only one time. Because this whole proof is based on you can only ask us for one valid signature. And this is the proof. This proof is based on constructing or having as an assumption a forger for WOTS. So this is just a reduction proof where if we say you can forge any signature out of us with this WOTS instance, we can first break this key one-wayness property I will explain in a minute, and then from this property we can break the pseudo-random function property, and then we effectively reduced the security of Winternet's one-time signature scheme to our assumption of this pseudo-random function property. So now we assume this forger, which can forge Winternet's one-time signatures, and we want to break the key one-wayness of Fn. And this is done by having first this query of the key one-wayness. In order to break the key one-wayness, we are given a riddle, which is some x and y, and we have to find k prime such that f applied with k prime on the known value x is y. Note that nowhere this key one-wayness actually says that this k prime has to exist, so this is a failure probability that we have to take in account for. But yeah, in principle, it just means finding this pre-image. Just in the sense like finding a pre-image for second pre. No, finding a pre-image. Just in the sense like you would find a pre-image for the hash function. Yeah. Informally, we can formulate this proof as first picking a uniformly randomly chosen alpha and beta, alpha from the set 1 to L and beta from 1 to W minus 1. And in principle, we construct the first correct instance of WOTS, but we do one thing different, and this is we inject our Y value into this public key of index alpha. So the alpha is public key value, consists of a hash chain or function chain that is starting from Y and going up to the public key. It is not starting from a secret key. So this is the exact thing that we are trying to do. We are trying to let the forger forge a signature which tells us something of the function chain that is coming before this Y, before this K, and most importantly, or before this Y, and most importantly, this function chain will contain this K with some probability. So everything before this Y we won't know in this function chain. We compute only up from this Y to this public key alpha. Now we let the forger request a signature from us. Because of this 1 at the top here, he is allowed to request exactly one valid signature from us, which is denoted by sigma and m. We have a failure probability, many actually. This is why this proof is not as tight as it could be. All of these are failure probabilities, and we fail on requests that require knowledge of K prime, which is exactly what we are trying to find out or trick the forger into forging the signature for. Now the forger gives us the signature sigma prime and m prime, and now we have a second failure probability, which is that the forger, which is that the forger didn't actually give us a signature which is on this chain before. You can imagine it just like here. If the sigma I would be our k or y, we want to trick this forger into forging a signature which is below. And if this didn't happen, we have a second failure. Then the third thing is, okay, we get now a valid signature. We can now compute upwards to this K prime and do a check. This check is important because there's multiple failure probabilities now. The failure could be that first of all, this cannot hold. Yeah, there is a probability that this this thing that we're trying to prove doesn't hold when we get the forged signature. One probability could be that there doesn't actually exist a K prime for this Y value. Yeah, so we are given an instance of key one-wayness we don't actually we cannot solve actually. This is the probability of 1 divided by K. 1 divided by kappa. And then also there is a probability that is a little bit harder to explain, but this forger doesn't have to use the function chain which actually crosses our paths. Yeah, this forger can start their function chain on a secret key which computed upwards will not once cross our K prime. And there are kappa to the power of w minus 1 many values which fulfill this equation, so the forger forges valid signature for us. So kappa to the power of w minus 1 many values which arrive at the public key alpha, but only a fraction of them actually cross our path with K prime and then y, which is kappa to the beta many values. So this is why we have a fraction, and I will now go over this, these probabilities. But if this equation at the end holds, we obtain our K prime, and from this K prime we have now broken the key one-wayness and continue from this broken key one-wayness to construct a distinguisher which breaks the pseudo-random function property. But first now go into the detail of the probabilities. The probability 1 that we fail because we would need knowledge about K prime is first of all the probability that the forger selects the correct digit, which is L to the power of minus 1, and then also which is that the forger actually requests us to sign a digit which is below beta, and we can extend this by just saying below W. Because beta is not really known in a general sense because it's uniformly randomly chosen. So this is an upper bound, a lower bound, so to say, on what the probability can be, which is LW to the power of -1. And the same result we get also for that the forger didn't forge our signature. Now we use this fact again that the checksum cannot be 0, so the forger cannot just forge this random value 0. And also we are given the fact that we have to be, or the forger for WOTS has to be EUF CMA, so existentially unforgeable under chosen method attack, which requires the forger to now output a forged signature for some message that is different of our message that he gave us in the Oracle query. So now we get a new message, and the checksum assures that at least one value will be lower, because obviously at least one value has to be changed, and the checksum is like a seesaw. If one goes up, the other one goes down, or the other way around. And then we also have this L to the power of -1 probability that our digit is chosen. And the authors of this WOTS dollar paper also computing the lower bound again, just add another W-1 uncertainty. Now the forger has a success probability of epsilon per definition. So this is just passing this success probability for a forger. And then this there's a kappa to the power of minus beta probability that we actually have a pre-image, or that we can find this key for the key one-wayness query. I talked about this. And the third thing, or last thing, is that interesting property I've already explained, where we have a ratio of keys which actually fulfill this property that the function chain arrives at our k prime at the beta f step. And together this probability already sums to one value of our claim. Let's go back to claim, which is this value at the front here. So now we need to know where the second value is coming from. And this is the second part of the reduction, which reduces the key one-wayness we've now constructed or broken, and constructs a new distinguisher on the pseudo-random function property. The pseudo-random function property is defined so you cannot find a distinguisher that distinguish the randomly chosen value from your function family that you want to prove with a randomly chosen function that just maps the domain to the codomain. Yeah. So as you can see, this will be the probability that we get at the end for the advantage of the adversary. And there we just add this term. And this term is easily explainable by this informal proof here, which is that we have this key one-wayness adversary we just constructed one slide earlier. And we now have two queries to the box oracle, which again picks either a random function from the domain to codomain, or our function that we want to prove as being pseudo-random. Now we query this box oracle on some uniformly randomly chosen x and get output of either this this x applied on some random k from our function family, or this x applied on some completely random function which matches the domain and codomain of our function family. And now we query this key one-wayness adversary with our value y and actually also x, and we now obtain this k, so this key with some probability. But most importantly, we get it. Yeah, we get this K, and now we can again query this box on some X prime and Y prime. Again, X prime being chosen as a random n-bit integer, and Y prime is the output of the box. And now we can do this check. And this check has some interesting probability properties. This check means just apply this K we have obtained from this first Oracle query with the values we got from the second Oracle query. So this X prime, and we get now this Y prime. And there is a probability that this actually matches. The probability that this matches, as you can see this check here, is if we've chosen the box query. In the box query, we've chosen the function from our function chain. This probability is 1 divided by kappa. Yeah. That for any random value we get, there exists a key at all, and this is the probability for the success. This kappa, you have to imagine, is about 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know, but some random, some very, very small value compared to the other probability of success, where we have a randomly chosen function from the domain to codomain in this box query, second box query, which is that the probability is 1 divided by 2 to the power of n, which is again a very small value. If this first value is close to the second value, our advantage shrinks very much. So our advantage is directly correlated to this differences of probabilities. So we want to have this kappa to be a very small value, preferably 1. But 1 is almost not achievable. 2, 3, 4, 5 is fine. Okay. Now we can say that this probability difference gives us a distinguisher which actually lets us pick with better than 50-50 chance what box actually queried, thus breaking the pseudo-random function property. And this is the whole proof. So now we've shown that if you have this forger for WOTS, which breaks the EOF CMA property we are defining here, we can now reduce this to the key oneness and reduce this to the pseudo-random function property, which is our assumption. So if any forger of this EOF CMA also breaks our assumption, and thus this forger cannot exist. And a summary for Winternet's one-time signature, we can say the number of chain function calls encode the value. The checksum prevents tinkering without finding a pre-image, and is important for the proof also. And now just a quick overview about the variants we have talked about. The first one is just applying this hash function multiple times. So this is a random walk through the domain of the hash function, whereas WOTS $, which I presented now, is a random walk through the key space of this function family. We get a not so tight security here, which is a loss of 36 bits of security. Given you are inputting 256 bits of input security, you're getting 220 classical security bits, which is halved with Grover's algorithm in the quantum world. And Winternet's one-time signature plus is an improvement of that is closer to the original again, which does a random walk through the domain of this function, hash function or pseudo-random function again, which has a very tight security of only losing, 10, 15 bits of security. Yeah. Okay. The extended Merkle signature scheme is very simple, building upon this Winternitz one-time signature and the Merkle signature scheme, we just swap out the Lamport-Diffie one-time signature scheme for what they call as an L tree. We can see this now here. So at the top we have a Merkle signature tree. They call now extended Merkle signature scheme tree, which has all these values. And then we have this L tree, which is in principle just having all the PK1, PK2, PK3, PK4, PK5, PK6, PK7 as the leaf nodes. And if the leaf node doesn't have some partner to combine with, we pull this leaf node up. So in the case of a balanced tree, which will be actually the tree we are looking at later, because W is 16, we have a balanced number of PKs here, which means that we have a balanced tree, which is just a normal binary tree here. And this L tree consists again of this PKs, and a hash function is applied here to arrive at this intermediate value, and then this is also combined with other values from the other L trees of other instances of the Winternitz signature scheme. And remember, where my mouse cursor around now is, we want to have 2 to the power of 60 many of these nodes. Yeah, so 2 to the power of 60 many signatures, one-time signatures we can perform. And all of these are hashed again, just like in the Merkle signature scheme, to this root hash. And in order to make this not require a collision resistant hash function, what XMSS does is require bit masks for every combination here, for every hash combination to the next higher node. We have this node's values at this level maybe, and then we take we apply a bit mask on each of these values, concatenate them together, and then we have a hash function applied to them. And this prevents us from combining independent solutions to a whole forgery. So these bit masks are actually used to fixate solutions to a certain part of the tree, which is a neat property because second pre-image resistance is easier to achieve and thus harder to break than collision resistance. In order to show you what an authentication would mean, we now have this published signature sigma 1 up to sigma L here, and T1 to TL, just like in the WOTS. So everything in this L tree is closely related to WOTS. And we have this X value, which gets put into this function chain and applied W minus 1 minus T1 times. And this output is this value here, which is exactly the public key. So in this configuration, we don't publish this public key 1 to L, but we publish this value, and everyone can compute the public key from it and compute upwards up to the root hash. So no public key needs to be published. That is why, again, these are values that are either not known or not published, but in this case, they are dotted as to say that they are calculated actually. Yeah, and auth means that these are nodes, or every solid block here needs to be published in order to verify this signature. So for every sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3, and so on, we compute this public key values, sigma pk1, pk2, up to pk7 here, which now means we have all of these information and go up to this value easily. And then we, again, just like in the Merkle signature scheme, need this authentication node to compute upwards to this root hash. Formally defined, we have these two slides. There you can again see here at the bottom right how the nodes and the bit masks interact with each other. And this is not that important, but now we have 2 to the power of h many signatures, and h, you want to have this to be 60. And also we have a hash function family, but this is a compressing hash function from 2n to n with a key index k, but this is not that important because for every XMSS instance we pick just one random k and compute every hash functions with this k. So yeah. This L tree can have also has bit masks which are shared between all L trees, and the public key is the XMSS root hash plus all the bit masks. Yeah. And we make use of the fact again that we don't need every Winternet's key pair in advance, but we can use a pseudo-random number generator to compute all of the secret keys for the key pair by having a very, very secret seed value, which now gets the round key as an input. And then we apply this pseudo-random function again with this output of the round key and the seed with 1 to L to get our respective SK1 and SKL. For this proof, this is a very stripped down version of the original proof, but they end up at this final formula, and this nsec is equivalent to a advantage for people that don't know this notation. Is advantage of breaking the EOF CMA property of XMSS with an instance of security parameter n and the tree, which consists of 2 to the power of h many nodes, bottom Winternet signature nodes, and the polynomial time t, and the oracle query of q equals 1, many one-time signature queries per Winternet's one-time signature. We want to show that this term at the front here is negligible in the security parameter, so any polynomial any polynomial here will be stripped away immediately because we have these components here to be negligible, and any polynomial multiplied by a function which is negligible in the security parameter is swallowed by this negligibility, and the whole is still negligible. This is the defining property of negligibility in n. So for every term here, we just have to show that this is polynomial in n, and then we are fine. This 2 is polynomial in n, obviously, because it's a constant. This 2 to the power of h is completely independent of n and thus also a constant. Plus log L is also not related to n, and this is as a whole polynomial. This is whole polynomial again, and just to keep you on track, these are actually two values we are taking the maximum out of, whereas the bottom one here has a plus between them. And the first term here is the probability that we are breaking this internal seed value I have here. So we have q equals to 2 to the power of h many oracle queries on our XMSS signature scheme, XM signature scheme. And we have this many oracle queries to figure out the internal seed value. Obviously, if we have the internal seed value, we can construct every secret key and thus break this whole system. We have still polynomial much time for it, which is a requirement for this whole negligibility, because we don't have exponential time yet on our computers, and probably not in the future. And then we have this, again, second pre-image resistance of this hash function family, or in particular the hash function we chose for this instance. And this just means that you have this public key and compute any second pre-image, which lets you inject any other Winternet's one-time signature in the signature scheme. And we have this many nodes where the hash function is evaluated, but as we said earlier, this is a polynomial, so this gets swallowed by the second pre-image resistance, which is a requirement. We have two requirements in order for XMSS to work. This second pre-image resistance being negligible in d prime, which is also a polynomial, the input t polynomial plus 2 to the power of h, which is a polynomial in n, the signing algorithm, the verification algorithm, and the keygen algorithm all need to be polynomial in order for this signature scheme to actually work, because you won't have much success with an exponential verification algorithm, for example. And then for every node in the signature scheme in this tree, we have this pseudo-random function which extended this round key to L many Winternitz one-time signature keys, and you have the probability of or the advantage on breaking the pseudo-random function property of the Winternitz one-time signature scheme, which we just proved 2 or 3 slides ago with q equals too many box queries on this pseudo-random function. So this is polynomial, this is negligible, this whole is negligible, 2 negligible functions added are negligible, this is polynomial, strips away, this is polynomial, strips away, this is a requirement, as is this pseudo-random function to be a requirement in being negligible. The max of 2 negligible function is still negligible. This 2 is polynomial in n, thus this gets swallowed by negligibility. This insect PRF is the requirement. All of these parameters are polynomial, so this is negligible. 2 negligible functions added are still negligible. Thus, the whole security of this XMSS is UFCMA in negligibility or less. And this concludes the whole proof of XMSS. Then for some variant of XMSS, we can look at the multi-tree variant. Again, we want to have 2 to the power of 60 many signatures to sign, so we have a virtually unlimited amount of signatures. And this takes roughly 15 minutes on a PC, on a standard PC in 2015. And this means we have 1 million signatures. Okay. This is quite slow. If you want to generate this tree for 2 to the power of 60, you won't get finished until the heat death of the universe. This is why we need a different approach, where we split this 2 to the power of 60 into multiple trees. That's why it's called multi-tree. And the idea there is that we use the upper tree, so this 2 to the power of 20 tree we've just generated, and the Winternitz one-time signatures of it we use to sign the respective public keys of the trees below it. So we just use the public key of the trees below as an input of the one-time signature of the higher trees. They are literally signed by the higher trees. The lower trees are signed by the higher trees. And this also gives us a neat property where we can parallelize the generation of the trees independent of each other. So this is embarrassingly parallel, and in its limit, we arrive at a theta of d being the number of trees times 2 to the power of h divided by d, which means for h equals 60 and d equals 3, we generate 3 trees, each being 2 to the power of 20 many signatures in size. So embarrassingly parallelized through 3 CPUs, we get 15 minutes of total generation time, and we have 2 to the power of 60 many signatures we can now sign. An interesting property also here is that we don't need to know the next tree in order to already use this signature scheme, which is solely based on the fact that we sign the next tree with the Winternitz one-time signatures of the higher tree. Yeah, so we use all of tree 0 in this graphic, and if we get to the end of tree 0, we start generating the next 0 tree, and use this sigma of the tree 1 to sign the next public key. Yeah, next 0's public key. And then we can use that again, and at some point this tree 1 will be used up, and then we generate the next 1 tree and also the next 1 child tree and sign off both of them and sign this to trees at tree 2, and the same happens for tree 3 maybe. Then just real quick, we want to go over the actual signing and signature key sizes here. So which sizes do we actually have? The the recommendation from National Institute of Standards and Technology is that we use SHA-2 256 with the Winternitz parameter of 16, and you can forget about SK2 at this moment. And we have signing times of about 3 milliseconds. And a bit security of 236 to 118 quantum security. But if we want to achieve this height of 60, we lose a little bit of our security. Yeah, that's part of the XMSS MT. And but still our secret key is only 15 kilobytes large, and most importantly, the public key is only 1.3 kilobytes, and the signing takes 4 milliseconds, which means that for this chain of trust I spoke at the beginning, you only need to transfer maybe 3 or 4 public keys, of each being 2 kilobytes, which is 6 kilobytes. That's very fast compared to maybe a McAleese with copper codes being 50 megabytes and giving us the same security. Then we have an outlook. Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, the outlook is Sphinx Plus, which is a stateless signature scheme, which combines our extended Merkle signature scheme multi-tree variant and still combines these trees with one-time signature plus signatures. So the WOTS plus signatures. But at the very bottom, we use this forest of random subsets, which allows us to have few time signature, where we the way that is done is by getting the input message and concatenating a number only used once, which we are free to choose as a signer, and then selecting or by building a digest out of that and selecting the one-time or few-time signature key based on this digest. And because the adversary can't force us to use this number only used once twice, this nonce twice, we actually don't sign same input messages with the same one-time signature key. And since the adversary can't influence the nonce at all, also different messages are very, very unlikely to match to the same one-time signature that is being used. This gives us this property that we can use it as a few-time signature scheme without any internal state. Yeah. So we have a tree height of 256, and Sphinx reduces this to 60, with still having 2 to the 128 security. Our initial question can now be answered. Can we create a post-quantum signature scheme using just hash functions? And the answer is very much yes. As you've seen already in the recommendation of NIST, they recommend using SHA-2 256. And this is exactly what you can do. For this pseudo-random function, you just take the key and pad it and concatenate it with M, pad it, and apply SHA-256 on it. And this hash function keyed M is just SHA-256, but because, again, for every instance of XMSS, you just have to pick some hash function, which in our case, we just always use SHA-256. But also, as I said, we have specialized hardware on many systems, so we can actually make use of AES, the Advanced Encryption Standard, which is in use for every symmetric key encryption nowadays. And we can directly use this AES function which gets a key as an input, key and message as an input, and outputs an output. And we can directly use this as the pseudorandom function by using the key k as a key for this AES and m as an input. And for the hash function, we can split our message into two parts, m1 and m2, and use the key k as in the recursive chain here of 2 as the key of the AES with m1 and apply a bit mask of m1 on it and use that as a key for the outer AES with m2 and the bit mask of m2, and now we have a hash function out of this AES. An AES has special instructions on many low power devices still, which means that this is very, very efficiently computable. Lastly, we can look at at my contribution, which is I've shown what challenges need to be tackled right now with the quantum world, and I've explained to you what XMSS is as a solution to this problem. And we also looked at a stateless scheme in a rough overview. You can now look at have an informed look into it, and I've also proven for the security for both WOTS and XMSS. For every talk, I finish by having a quote, and today's quote is from Bruce Schneider in 2009 when a new attack on AES was published, and his words to that were, "Attacks always get better, they never get worse."